no, 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 no.
Every year, people step straight into danger just to take a photo, feed a wild animal, or prove they aren't afraid, and the results are often horrifying. Some climb into zoo enclosures, others ignore fences meant to save their lives. One man jumped into a lion's den for a selfie. Another tried to pet a peacock and was left covered in blood, and one tourist thought he could stare down a charging rhino. They all discovered the same brutal truth. Nature doesn't care about your vacation. These are the tourists who went too far and paid the ultimate price for their foolishness. Fearless or foolish? In 2016, at Nehru Zoo Park in Hyderabad, India, a drunk man decided to prove how fearless he was. He climbed over the barrier and jumped straight into the lion enclosure, nearly 12 feet down. The crowd screamed and everyone begged him to stop, but he didn't care. He splashed into the moat, singing and waving like he was greeting old friends. For a moment, everything froze. The lions turned and locked their eyes on him. One step closer and he'd have been gone. Luckily for him, it was feeding time, and the lions were too busy with dinner to bother with the fool who'd crashed the party. Zookeepers rushed in, tossed down a rescue pole, and pulled him out just in time. Police took over, and he ended up charged under the Wildlife Protection Act. If he'd jumped a minute earlier, or at any other zoo, this would have been a headline, not a story. What saved him wasn't courage or fate. It was dumb luck and a full belly on the lion's part. Hunt backfired. These hunters thought they had everything under control when they set out into the woods for a wild hog hunt. Rifles in hand, confidence high. They figured it would be a quick and easy day, but they couldn't have been more wrong. The hogs turned out to be a lot smarter and faster than expected. They dodged bullets, charged right back, and completely flipped the hunt on its head. What started as a fun chase quickly turned into chaos. Within seconds, dozens of wild boars stormed out of the brush, surrounding the hunters. Shots rang out, but it was clear the men were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Panic took over as they scrambled to escape, realizing this was no simple hunt anymore. It was a fight to stay safe. At that point, they probably wished they had come more prepared, maybe with better gear and a plan for what to do when the hunted became the hunters. Dragged into the deep. In August 2014, the river took another life. The victim was Tran Van Loan, a quiet fisherman who had moved from Vietnam to build a peaceful life with his wife Lei Bay in Australia's Northern Territory. Locals already knew the danger that lurked in that stretch of water. They called the giant saltwater crocodile Michael Jackson. It was massive, territorial, and feared by everyone who worked near the river. For Tran and Lei, fishing was their escape from the hard work of farm life. That afternoon was no different. The sun was hot, the air heavy, and the river calm. They set up their hand lines like always, laughing and talking as the water shimmered gold under the fading light. Tran waded knee-deep near the bank while Lei stayed on the shore, keeping watch. She reminded him, as she always did, to be careful of the crocodiles. Tran smiled, said he knew the river, and kept fishing. That would turn out to be his greatest mistake. Just after 5:30, his line snagged. Tran thought it was caught on debris and stepped a little farther into the water to free it. That single step sealed his fate. In an instant, the calm surface erupted. A violent splash shattered the quiet, and a huge crocodile burst from the river, its jaws clamping around Tran's arm. The force knocked him off his feet before Lei could even scream. She ran toward the water with a knife, but it was already too late. The crocodile dragged him under in seconds. The river went still, and only bubbles and ripples remained. Lei stood frozen for a moment, then rushed forward, pulling at the fishing line, screaming his name. Panicked, Lei ran to their car and sped to a nearby crocodile tour station for help. Within minutes, park rangers and boat operators launched a search. They knew what they were looking for, and they also knew they were already too late. A few hours later, they spotted a large shape moving just below the surface near the area locals called Michael Jackson's Stretch. Traps were set, and the giant crocodile was captured soon after. When rangers examined it, their worst fears were confirmed. Inside its stomach were human remains. Downstream, Tran's body was found caught in the reeds. The river Tran loved had turned on him. It gave no warning, no second chance, and no mercy. One step too far, and the hunter that ruled those waters reminded everyone who really owns the river. The lion test. The crowd froze in horror as a man stepped over the fence and walked straight toward a pair of lions at Taipei Zoo in 2004. A male and female waited just a few meters away, powerful muscles coiled, eyes fixed on the foolish intruder. The man began shouting, claiming that Jesus would save him from harm. He seemed convinced the lions would sense his belief and spare him. At first, the animals watched quietly, more curious than threatened. But as his shouting grew louder and more erratic, their patience quickly ran out. Suddenly, they lunged. Claws raked his arms, teeth sank into his legs. Screams filled the air as zookeepers rushed in, spraying water and firing tranquilizer darts, trying to create a gap. The man scrambled, barely escaping complete disaster. Somehow, by luck or timing, he survived with a few injuries. The crowd could hardly believe it. One wrong move, and this stunt would have been fatal. Other tourists believed he was reenacting the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Whatever the reason, his delusion nearly cost him his life. This life-threatening encounter left zookeepers shaken, security tightened, and everyone watching with their hearts in their throats. The elephant standoff. People really don't realize just how dangerous elephants can be, and this group of tourists definitely learned that the hard way. The video begins innocently enough. A small group of tourists is exploring a jungle in Zimbabwe, enjoying the scenery and the thrill of being close to nature. Then things take a turn. The tour guide spots a wild elephant in the distance, and perhaps a little too confidently, starts moving closer to get a better look. At first, it's tense but calm as the tourists whisper, cameras rolling, while the massive elephant faces them. But within seconds, the situation changes. The elephant steps forward aggressively, its size and power suddenly impossible to ignore. The guide tries to stay calm, repeating, "Steady, steady," while the tourists nervously back up and crouch behind a small ditch for cover.
Steady, steady, walk, step, hey, steady, my boy, steady, steady, my boy, steady.
Just when it seems like the animal might back off, it fakes charges again, letting out deep, heavy breaths as it inches closer. The guide does his best to calm it down, speaking softly and holding his ground, but everyone else can clearly sense the danger. Thankfully, after a few tense moments, the elephant finally turns away and walks off, leaving everyone shaken but unharmed. The polar mistake. In 2009, a woman's reckless choice brought her face to face with one of the deadliest predators on Earth. At the Berlin Zoo, visitors gasped as a 32-year-old ignored every warning and climbed straight into the polar bear enclosure during feeding time. She pushed through prickly hedges, scaled a wall, and jumped into the icy water, excitement on her face. For a fleeting moment, she seemed in control, but the thrill vanished instantly. One massive polar bear turned toward her and lunged, sinking its powerful jaws into her arm and leg. Screams echoed through the crowd as zookeepers rushed in, using poles to push the bear back and lowering a rescue rope. Hope returned for a moment as they began to pull her out, but she slipped and fell back into the water, right into the bear's reach. Panic surged through the onlookers. Another frantic rescue followed, and finally she was pulled to safety, soaked, bleeding, and shaken to the core. Weeks in the hospital followed as she recovered from deep wounds and trauma that would linger for a lifetime. Her motives remain a mystery, but her actions left a chilling warning. No fence, no sign, and no rule can save someone who chooses to ignore danger. Killed by a cassowary. One mistake, one wrong move. That was all it took for 17-year-old Philip McLean to lose his life. It happened in 1926, in the thick scrub of far north Queensland, Australia. Philip and his younger brother, Granville, were out searching for their horses when their dog suddenly ran ahead and began barking. Moments later, they heard the sound of panic. The dog was trapped by a cassowary, a huge, flightless bird known for its violent nature and dagger-like claws. Granville rushed forward to help, but never made it close. The cassowary kicked with lightning speed, slamming him to the ground. Philip, desperate to save his brother and their dog, grabbed a horse bridle and charged. He didn't stand a chance. The bird spun and struck, driving its 5-inch claw across Philip's neck. The cut was deep enough to slice through flesh and muscle. He stumbled backward, clutching his throat, blood pouring down his chest. Philip tried to run. He managed only a few hundred yards before he fell to the ground. By the time Granville reached him, his brother was gone. The cassowary walked away as if nothing had happened. Cassowaries are stunning to look at. Tall, glossy feathers, bright blue heads, and a horn-like crest that gives them a prehistoric look. But behind that beauty is a dangerous temper. They can stand over 6 feet tall and weigh more than 70 kilograms. Each foot carries a claw shaped like a knife. One kick can open a person from stomach to spine. They can leap high, strike fast, and chase anything that threatens them. Philip McLean became the first recorded person killed by a cassowary, and his death remains one of the most shocking examples of how dangerous these birds can be. People often call them the world's most dangerous bird, and for good reason. Cassowaries don't bluff or warn. They attack when cornered, and when they do, survival depends on distance and luck. Feathers of fury. Peacocks are beautiful birds, but their beauty hides strength and aggression that few people expect. At Zuyuan Zoo in Jiangsu, China, a group of tourists ignored warning signs and barriers. They climbed into the peacock enclosure to take pictures and grab feathers. At first, the birds seemed calm, watching quietly. Then the noise and movement pushed them past their limit. The first peacock attacked without warning. It screamed, spread its wings, and struck with its claws. The sound was loud and sharp, and within seconds the entire flock followed. Dozens of birds shrieked and beat their wings, filling the air with feathers and screams. One tourist tried to pull away but slipped, and a bird slashed his arm open. Blood streaked down his hand as he fell to the ground. Others tried to fight them off but only made the birds angrier. The peacocks began pecking, scratching, and even jumping on the tourists, their claws tearing through clothes and skin. Zoo staff heard the screams and ran to the scene. They used nets and sticks to push the birds back and drag the tourists out. When the chaos finally stopped, several peacocks were bleeding from broken feathers, and the tourists stood in shock, covered in scratches and blood. What began as a joke turned into a nightmare. The last splash. One step into the water was all it took for adventure to turn into horror. Ginger Meadows, just a day away from her 25th birthday, laughed as she waded into the Prince Regent River in Western Australia. The water looked calm and harmless, but beneath the surface waited more than 100 saltwater crocodiles, silent and unseen. It was March 29th, 1987. Ginger was 24, confident and full of life. She was part of a yacht crew traveling through the remote Kimberley region. The group stopped at Cascade Falls, a breathtaking waterfall surrounded by dense jungle. The view was stunning, but it was also dangerous. The captain, Bruce Fitzpatrick, knew those waters well. He warned everyone not to swim. Saltwater crocodiles ruled this river. They were not only powerful but ancient predators, capable of killing in seconds. Ginger and her friend Jane thought the danger was exaggerated. The sun was hot, the water looked inviting, and the falls were too beautiful to resist. They stepped into the shallows, laughing and splashing, waist-deep in what they believed was a safe spot. From the yacht above, Bruce watched them. Then he saw it, a dark, slow-moving shape cutting through the water toward the women. His voice broke the calm as he shouted for them to get out. But the warning came too late. The water exploded. A massive saltwater crocodile burst from below, jaws open wide. Jane threw a shoe in panic, hitting the animal on its snout. It flinched for a split second. Ginger turned toward her friend, eyes wide with fear, and asked, "What do we do now?" Before she could move, the crocodile lunged again. Its jaws closed around her, dragging her under. The river went still almost immediately. There was no scream, no struggle, only silence and ripples spreading across the surface. Search teams arrived soon after, but they already knew the odds. 2 days later, on what would have been Ginger's birthday, rescuers found her remains caught in a mangrove thicket downstream. As they pulled her body onto the boat, another crocodile attacked, slamming into the hull and tearing through it with terrifying force. The rescuers fought it off, shaken but alive. Ginger Meadows' death shocked Australia. She had been young, fearless, and full of energy, but in one moment, she had stepped into the domain of one of Earth's most efficient killers. The Prince Regent River still looks peaceful from a distance, but locals never forget what hides beneath. Here, the water does not forgive curiosity. It waits, still and patient, for the next mistake. Subscriber's pick. A tourist unknowingly earned himself a spot on the list of idiot tourists who made terrible mistakes with dangerous animals. He wandered away from his guide, clutching a baseball bat, and decided it was a good idea to confront a full-grown rhino. Within seconds, the beast charged, tossing him through the air like a rag doll. Witnesses later said he was probably drunk, and honestly, who else would think they could take on a rhino and win? What do you think drives people to tempt nature like this? Drop your thoughts below as we move to the next story. The viral sting. He wanted a viral clip that would make him look fearless, but what he got instead was a nightmare that went far beyond the camera. On a sunny fishing pier somewhere in Asia, a group of friends laughed and showed off their catches, phones out, recording every moment. Everything seemed fun until one of them decided to take it up a notch. Grinning for the camera, he bent down and lifted a live stingray with both hands, proudly posing like a champion of the sea. For a few seconds, it stayed still, its slick body glistening under the sun. Then came the moment no one saw coming. The stingray whipped its tail, driving its venomous barb straight into his hand. The sound that followed was pure agony, a scream that cut through the laughter. He dropped the Stingray instantly, stumbling back as blood mixed with salt water on the pier. The pain hit fast, a burning, twisting fire that shot through his arm and wouldn't stop. His friends stood frozen, one whispering in panic that it was a California round stingray, small but deadly. Its venom didn't just sting, it tore through nerves, triggering waves of muscle spasms, nausea, and blinding pain that made him collapse to his knees. By the time they rushed him to get help, his hand had swollen grotesquely. The skin around the wound was pulsing like it was alive. The barb had to be cut out carefully to keep it from breaking inside. He was lucky to survive. A few inches higher, and the strike could have pierced his throat or face, ending everything in seconds. The video did go viral, but instead of admiration, it left viewers horrified as they watched a man learn the hard way that nature doesn't perform for attention. Family drenched in warning. They wanted a perfect family memory, but what they got instead was a soaking reminder that nature doesn't play along for the camera. At the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, a young couple arrived with their 2 children, excited to see Na, a massive Siberian tiger. They expected smiles, photos, and maybe a few roars for the kids' amusement, but Na had other plans. The tiger wasn't lounging quietly in the shade. He was restless, pacing, his eyes locked on the growing crowd. The mother stepped closer to the fence, holding up her phone for a picture, her kids standing just behind her. Then, with a quick flick of his tail, Na turned around and sprayed them with a burst of foul-smelling urine, marking his territory and completely ruining their picture-perfect moment. The mother's face was instantly drenched, the children were soaked, and the father jumped back, trying to pull the stroller away while shielding the camera. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the youngest child screamed, half in shock and half in disgust. Drunken daredevil. With a beer clenched between his teeth and alcohol dulling his senses, an American tourist in Asia decided to play a dangerous game. What started as a casual hangout turned into a test of stupidity and fate. Spotting a cottonmouth snake nearby, a reptile notorious for its deadly venom and flesh-destroying bite, he thought it would be entertaining to grab it by the head. Laughter filled the air as he reached down, gripping the snake like it was part of a magic trick. For a moment, it looked like he had everything under control. Then it all went wrong. The snake's mouth snapped open, its fangs sinking deep into his hand. The crowd gasped in horror, but he didn't even drop the beer he was holding. Blood started to rise and swell beneath his skin as the venom spread through his body, quietly tearing him apart from the inside. He tried to act tough, brushing it off as another wild night stunt, but there was nothing funny about what was happening. Cottonmouth venom doesn't just sting, it destroys tissue, cuts off blood flow, and kills if ignored. Within hours, the swelling turned black, and his arm began to rot from the inside out. By the time help arrived, the damage was too severe. Doctors had no choice but to amputate his arm to save his life. Monkey revenge in São Paulo. Brazil is known for its wild beauty, a place where danger often hides behind the scenery. But even locals sometimes forget how unpredictable that wild side can be. In 2011, a mechanic named Joy dos Santos from São Paulo found out the hard way. After a long day of drinking, he wandered into the Saracoba Zoo, unaware that his night was about to turn into chaos. Drawn to the spider monkey enclosure, he leaned over the barrier, probably thinking it was harmless fun. But the monkeys didn't see it that way. One sank its teeth into his wrist while 2 others clawed and bit at his arm and shoulder. Spider monkeys might look playful, but they're fiercely territorial. Once he crossed their space, they fought back with everything they had. Zookeepers rushed in and dragged him out as he screamed in shock. The video spread quickly online, and viewers couldn't believe his recklessness. The crocodile hunter. Steve Irwin wasn't just the man who wrestled crocodiles. He was the man who faced danger head-on, grinned, and somehow made it entertaining. But on a cloudy morning in September 2006, the wild fought back in a way no stunt could prepare him for. At 44, Steve was unstoppable, filming a documentary called Ocean's Deadliest off Australia's northeastern coast. Alongside him were cameraman Justin Lyons and director John Stainton, who admitted later he had a bad feeling before the trip. Their boat, Croc 1, cut through the Coral Sea as they searched for sharks to capture on film. When the ocean turned calm, Steve spotted a stingray gliding just beneath the surface. Stingrays are peaceful creatures that only strike when threatened. To Steve, it was a perfect opportunity to film a calm underwater scene for his daughter Bindy's upcoming wildlife show. He hovered above the ray, camera rolling, calm and focused. Then in an instant, everything changed. The stingray struck with lightning speed, driving its venomous barb straight into Steve's chest. It pierced through his heart. His first words were not a cry for help. They were an instruction to keep filming. Even as blood spread around him and his strength faded, Steve remained focused on the story. Justin realized the danger immediately. They surfaced and tried to help, pressing on the wound, calling for assistance, and fighting to keep him alive. Within minutes, Steve whispered his last words, acknowledging the reality of his fate. By the time they reached land, the world had lost one of its bravest hearts. News spread instantly. Fans mourned, tributes poured in, and his wife, Terry, returned to a zoo filled with silence. His memorial took place in the Coliseum, surrounded by the animals he loved most. Too close to cute. He thought hugging a panda would make him look cool in front of two women. At Nanchang Zoo in China, a man named Chen spotted a panda named Mauling sleeping in its enclosure. Most people watched from a safe distance, but not Chen. Trying to impress, he climbed over the barrier and waved at the panda like it was a friendly dog. When Mauling didn't react, Chen made the mistake of poking it. That one poke changed everything. The panda jumped up, grabbed his leg, and pulled him down. Chen tried to fight back, but it was useless. The panda was way too strong. For a few scary seconds, the crowd just watched, shocked and frozen. Somehow, Chen managed to escape. His clothes ripped and pride shattered. He got lucky. No broken bones, just a painful lesson. Later, police said he only did it to impress the two women. The zoo released a statement reminding visitors that pandas may look cute, but they're still wild animals, and they don't play nice when disturbed. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.